Texas A&M is very capable of beating the Texas Longhorns.
You are Locked On Aggies, your daily podcast on the Texas A&M Aggies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome on into Locked On Aggies. I'm your host, Andrew Stefaniak. Thanks for making Locked On Aggies your first listen every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So, ladies and gentlemen, on the show today, we're talking a little bit about why the Aggies can beat the Longhorns. We're going to talk a little bit about, is there a game that's not LSU or Texas left on the schedule that maybe we're not talking enough about? And then lastly, we're going to predict where this recruiting class ends up. Show's coming out a little bit late today. Sorry about that. Had some internet issues this morning and wanted to deliver you all a quality show rather than a blobbity, yucky, non-internet thing. So appreciate the patience there, y'all. But let's get right into this. I've been seeing all over, and Texas fans, welcome. I know you're going to see the title of this one and be here. There was no question to me that Texas A&M is capable of beating Texas at home. I've seen a lot of Texas fans in my comments, kind of everywhere, that seem to believe that there's no way in the world that Texas A&M is going to win this game at home. And that's not true. I mean, that's just the reality here. Now, if I was predicting this game right now, and more than likely if I'm predicting this game when it comes around, am I going to pick Texas to win? Probably, yes. That's not the point of what I'm saying. What I'm saying is there's a real likelihood that the Aggies can win this football game. Texas is great. Texas is a really, really good football team for a reason. This team is no joke. Like I said, Texas is right now the number one team in college football for a reason. Now, we're going to find out a lot about this team over the next few weeks. You got to play Oklahoma on the road. We know what that game means on Saturday. Then you host you host Georgia. And those two games, I mean, they could lose both those football games. They could win both those football games. It's very realistic that this could go either way. And I'll tell you, I think Texas is a great team. I think they're definitely a top 5 team in college football. There's no debate to any of that. But Texas A&M is capable of beating them. And I fully believe that. I think that one thing people aren't putting in, and that's what kind of frustrates me, is Texas fans, you're more than welcome to be proud of your team and happy your team and believe in them and think they're going to win this game. But, I mean, it's just the way that people talk about this game. It's like there's no way in humanity in the world that Texas A&M wins this football game. Like, that's been the vibe that I'm getting from Texas fans. And that's just crazy to me. I mean, you can't really believe that there's no way in the world that they lose that football game. Texas A&M, and now it's funny. It's funny how I love narratives in sports. It's a funny part of it. Now the narrative, and I'm not pinning this on Texas fans. It's just all over college football. Well, Missouri's awful. Texas A&M beat an awful Missouri team. That's not true. That's not true. Was Missouri overrated or overhyped? Yeah, and I said that before the game last week. But to act like they're not a good football team and absolutely boat racing this team at home is not a good win. It's just not true. And I've talked about it too. Heck, I think even if Texas A&M is a good football team. I think we've officially learned that. The Notre Dame game, you played about the worst game you could possibly play, in my opinion. I mean, Connor Rigman played bad. You didn't play well. You struggled to tackle. There was a lot going wrong there. And then in your next most significant game, which of course is the game against Missouri, you just play great. It's a good football team. There's no debate to it, is kind of what my argument here is. So I think that this is a game where I would have thought Texas A&M has a chance against the Longhorns in this game, even if they were kind of just a middle of the road team, simply because it's college football. Anything can happen, especially in these rivalry games. This game's going to be close. I don't care if Texas A&M it all falls apart and they're awful, or Texas it all falls apart and they're awful. This is going to be a close football game. This is just what happens in rivalries. We see it in all rivalries. I mean, the Egg Bowl, that'll be a great game this year, and Mississippi State's terrible. It's just what happens. The Iron Bowl, you already know that Auburn's going to hang with Alabama, even though Auburn is pretty bad. Then you got, the game. Obviously, Michigan and Ohio State are pretty good every year. Michigan's, I promise you, they're going to I think that Michigan is not good this year, and they're going to hang with Ohio State this year. That's just what happens. Whichever team is better, it's going to be a football game. That's just what happens in rivalries. There's no debate to it. That's just the reality. And then you add on top of that Texas A&M's at home in front of one of the better crowds in college football, one of the better environments, with a solid football team. I'll tell you this. I'll tell you this. I think there's a world where the line in this football game is a lot closer than people think. I think if people had to take a guess right now, this is curious, Texas fans, A&M fans, if you had to guess right now what the line is going to be for this football game coming up here in a few weeks, month and a half, whatever, leave in the YouTube comments what you believe the line would be. I bet it would be something like Texas 3.5, 2.5. I don't think it's going to be a huge line. I don't. So let me know in the comments what y'all think about that. But that's just been what's frustrated me of late on social media in my YouTube comments here, is seeing fans, especially Texas fans. And once again, no disrespect. You believe in your football team. That's fine. I get that. But not seeing a world or a possibility where Texas A&M can win this game is just flat out crazy. I believe in what Texas A&M is now. I mean, you got a great defense. If Connor Wigman plays, if he plays 80% of how he played against Missouri the rest of the season, I think the Aggies can go 10-2. I really do. I really believe that. He played that well, partially because he played that good against Missouri, but also because your defense is great, your running backs are great, and your offensive line has exceeded expectations, which is exactly heading into the season what we said Texas A&M needed to do to be successful and to be a good football team. So I'm really anxious to see how this all plays out. I think that this is going to be one of the better games all season long in college football. I really do. I think it's going to be an incredibly, incredibly good football game. I think that it's going to be a down to the wire game. Whoever wins, it's going to be a game where both teams had chances to win the game, and it's going to come down to who makes a play in the last 5 minutes of this football game. I think it's going to be that close to where it's a walk-off field goal. It's a last-second touchdown drive. That's what you're going to see in this football game. And I'm excited about it. Now, to say you can't not be excited about this football game, this is just going to be a special, special game for college football. Not just for Longhorn fans, not just for Aggie fans. This is going to be a special football game for college football fans because, once again, people forget, and it's funny, people, especially people my age, I think people forget that this rival, what it was. I mean, once again, people my age, I'm 24. This is a game where I loved college football since I was, infant, but you don't really understand the significance of things till you get older. And that's why, this rivalry, obviously I understand it. I've seen it play out, but it's not what I don't fully get it yet. And I'm excited. And that's what I'm talking about for people my age, people. And, some of you, in your 30s, 40s and 50s, whatever, or older, this game is a huge part of your life and it's back. And I know that that's going to be really special for both fan bases and all of college football. So I'm really excited as someone who lives, breathes, and dies college football like I do. I'm really excited to see this game because it's going to be special for me. I know it's going to be special for all y'all. But yes, Texas A&M is capable of winning this football game. There's no question there. We're going to talk a little bit about the Auburn, Mississippi State, and South Carolina matchups. Should we be more concerned with any of those games than we are? We'll have that conversation coming up right here on Locked On Aggies. But first, we'll talk about our friends over at FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. There's so much you can bet on, ladies and gentlemen. I love there's multiple parlays I do every single week with my buddies. We always go to a restaurant in town here on Thursdays and we bet the first touchdown score. That's a ton of fun. We love betting. We always do in my house. We live on a street called Benjamin Street, and every primetime game, we do the 10 to win a Benji, which is cringy, but we love it. Bet where me and my 3 roommates, we each pick a leg of the parlay. It's a ton of fun. So there's just so much fun things you can do with FanDuel. Go check it out. I promise you will not regret it. Once again, that's FanDuel.com to go get started. The games left on the schedule for Texas A&M. You got South Carolina, you got Mississippi State, you got Auburn, you got Texas, you got LSU, and of course, you've got New Mexico State. Luckily, Diego Pavia is no longer there. Ask Alabama fans about that guy. And I guess Auburn fans, because last year New Mexico State beat Auburn. There you go. So, man, Diego Pavia, I guess, just owns the state of Alabama. That just hit me. Good for him. He's a heck of a fun player to watch, speaking of which. But, the 3 games here that are on the road, we're not going to spend much time talking about New Mexico State. I really don't have any concerns there. Auburn, Mississippi State, and South Carolina. Of those 3, should we be more concerned than we are? Here's my take on this. So, Mississippi State, I'm just going to call a spade. Not worried about Mississippi State. I'm really I don't have many concerns about Mississippi State. I don't think they are good. I think this is a team that the Aggies shouldn't have any trouble, even on the road, going and steamrolling. Once again, this is a team that lost at home by 20-something points to Toledo. Now, you know what we learned on Saturday? You cannot overlook anybody in college football. You can't overlook any teams right now. Arkansas beats Tennessee. Alabama loses to Vandy. There were a lot of upsets in college football. So you cannot overlook any team in college football right now. So I'm not saying I think Mississippi. I think Vandy would beat Mississippi State. Do they play? Have they played yet? We'll see if they play. They don't play. But if Mississippi State and Vandy played, I'm putting money on Vandy money line. That's how bad I think Mississippi State is. Just don't think they're very good. And I don't think the Aggies will have any trouble going on the road and taking care of business in that football game. Now, the Auburn and South Carolina games are where I get a little bit concerned. South Carolina obviously got a huge win over Kentucky to start the season. A Kentucky team that we obviously found out I think is a little bit better than people have given them credit for. Then you play at home with game day in town, a tight game against LSU. You lose that one 36-33. It looks like you really have a chance to win if you're South Carolina. You come up short. You then beat the crap out of Akron, and then Ole Miss comes into town and beats you bad 27-3, which is funny because Kentucky beats Ole Miss on the road, a team that South Carolina beats terribly in Lexington. And then Ole Miss comes and beats South Carolina at home bad. Like, that's just part of college football. It's part of the funniness of college football. So, South Carolina, I think, is an Arkansas level football team. You know what I mean? They're not bad, but they're not great. That's the type of football team they are to me. And I think that playing on the road, am I incredibly scared of this football game? No. I think that Sellers is a solid quarterback. He's back healthy, right? Let me double check that. He played against Ole Miss, right? Yes, Lenore Sellers is back. Is he a great quarterback? No. I don't think he's an elite quarterback. I think he's a good quarterback. I think he's okay. I think his ability to use his legs can hurt you. And so, that's something that you got to monitor. I think he's a solid quarterback that can win a football game, especially at home. So we're talking a little bit about Auburn, and then we'll decide, are we more concerned about South Carolina or Auburn? Auburn is a football team that when they show up, when they play well, they can win football games. I believe that. And it's funny because you look at the schedule and they've lost to Oklahoma and Georgia and they lose to Cal, and it seems like it's really all falling apart for the Auburn Tigers. But I think that their quarterbacks are so bad that, and who else? They lost somebody else. I pulled up, I can't remember. California, Arkansas, Oklahoma, and Georgia. So, their quarterbacks are so bad that I think it is going to be hard for them to win games, even though I think they have a solid defense, a good defense. They have great receivers, a great running back. They have an okay offensive line. So, they have all that. But at the same time, the most important position, which we all know this, all college football fans know how important it is to have a solid quarterback. Auburn doesn't have one. Now, Texas A&M has learned firsthand. It reminds me of the Cadillac Williams game a couple of years ago. I mean, Auburn's a tough place to play. It's a weird place to play. Will fans still be bought in at that point? I mean, it could be ugly for them at that point. They still have the Iron Bowl. There's still some. I think they have to go. They still have a tough slate ahead, is what I'm getting at here. So will they be able to win any more football games? Will their fans still be bought in? And that's one thing you got to give a team credit where they're due. I think that Auburn fans they'll show up for that team regardless if they're good or not. The environments, and we learned that in the Cadillac Williams game. I mean, I think it's going to be a tough place to play, even if they're how bad they are. So I'll be honest with you, and I think this is a little surprising because I think South Carolina might be the better team top to bottom. I'm a little bit more concerned about Auburn. I just think it's a weird place to play. It's going to be really hard knowing that game for you is the week before the game against Texas, the week before one of the most important games in Texas A&M football history in a long time, probably. Will you be able to keep your brain focused one direction to where you're not overly concerned, about next week? And I think, or the following week, I think if you are able to keep your brain on Auburn, you win that game. I think if you start thinking about Texas, and Coach Elko is going to do everything in his power to make sure that doesn't happen to this team. But if you start doing that, if you start thinking about Texas, it's going to be really, really hard to win this football game. So that's my take there. Even though I think their quarterbacks are awful, I still think that, when you have a good defense, if their quarterbacks take care of the football, they can still beat you. And that's what I'm saying. I mean, they've been in most of the games they've lost, Auburn has. So, that'll be a tough game. So I take, and when I say I'm taking Auburn over South Carolina, we're talking 51-49. I mean, it is not a wide margin. And I think South Carolina is probably the better football team. I just think it's a weird place to go play. That's just my take on it. So while I've talked about, the Aggies should win all three of those games and obviously beat New Mexico State to where you beat LSU or Texas, you're in the playoff, or both. That'd be even better. But, if you do that, if you take care of business in those four games, and then you beat LSU or Texas, you're in the college football playoff. That is why these games are going to be even more important. Because, I mean, in all honesty, if you beat South Carolina and you beat Mississippi State and you beat New Mexico State and you beat LSU, you're going into that Auburn game going, man, we win this game more than likely, regardless of what happens against Texas, we're going to the playoff. So that's going to be something to think about. So that's my take on that. We're going to talk a little bit just for a second about recruiting, but first we got to talk about our friends over at Game Time. Game Time is the best place and should be the only place anyone ever buys tickets to sporting events, to go see a comedian, to a Broadway play, to a concert, anything that you want to go attend in person, you need a ticket for, the only place you should be buying those on Game Time. My favorite feature of the Game Time app is how you can look and see what the venue looks like. You can look and see where, okay, here's where the concert, here's where the stage is. Here we're at the baseball game, going to baseball game. Here's where the field is. Do I want to sit here, here, and here? I love that feature in the app. It's easy to use. It makes buying tickets so easy. It's why I love using the Game Time app. And it's the only app I'll ever use when I buy tickets. And I recommend y'all do the same. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. So I want to talk just for a second. I've had a lot of people ask me about this and talk to me about this when it comes to the recruiting class and where will the recruiting class end up for this team and for the Aggies and stuff like that. Currently, the class on 24/7 Sports sits at 9th overall. And, I think there's a real world where this class will be top 10. I feel very confident in top 10. Your recruiting slowed down a little bit, and that's just part of it. I mean, the big months of recruiting are June and July, and in those months, you got signing day coming up. You're going to be trying to flip some kids. There'll be people trying to flip some of your recruits. This is the reality here. So, I have a feeling this class is going to finish in the 6 to 8 range is my guess, but I feel confident that it'll finish in the 6 to 10 range. That is kind of where my confidence lies when it comes to this recruiting class. In Coach Elko's real first recruiting class, obviously last year, he was able to kind of close it down and finish and land some players late. But that's my guess as to where the recruiting class is going to finish. So that's my take there. I want to hear y'all's thoughts on that in the YouTube comments. Does it get in the top 5, or do you think that 6 to 8, 6 to 10 range is fair for where Texas A&M's 2025 recruiting class is going to end up? Let me know that in the YouTube comments. That's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Aggies. Once again, thank y'all so much. I had some Wi-Fi issues this morning with some weather and stuff, so I really appreciate y'all. I'm sorry we're a little bit late today. Back to normal tomorrow once again. So appreciate y'all being here. We're plans for the rest of the week. We're talking a little bit about the some players who have overachieved in the first half of the season and some players who have underachieved, and we kind of want to see play better in the back half. That'll be tomorrow's conversation right here on Locked On Aggies. Thank you all for being here. Have a great rest of your day, and we will see you tomorrow.